Hello, today we're going to take a look at how we trace out and measure pre-made packages from the world and redraw them in Illustrator so that we can build our own versions. I have a photograph taken of an opened up cereal box that we're going to use for a demonstration. So the first thing we're going to look for before we start drawing and coming up with anything is a good beginning reference point. I can't say all because when I say that, someone will bring up a counterpoint, but most packaging has at least one easy reference point, one boring panel. There should be one place somewhere on the box that's roughly square or rectangular and entirely made out of creases. So we're going to look for a panel on the box that is folded on all four sides and is rectangular in shape. I think we'll use this one. So we're going to measure this panel, and that's going to be our first panel that we recreate in Illustrator. Over on our blank document in Illustrator, we've made a canvas that is just bigger than the overall size of the box when cut open and laid flat. And we're going to start drawing our design on here. The first thing we're going to lay out is that rectangle we just talked about that is all creases. So we're going to rename a couple layers in our layer board to set this up. I'm going to make a new layer that I'm going to call crease. I know, real creative. And on the crease layer, I'm going to start by grabbing the rectangle tool and drawing out the size of the rectangle that I found. This rectangle is 7 3/4 by 11 3/4 inches. So 7.75 by 11.75. And that is our first one. We'll move it up into the place in here. Now, it's convention in a lot of places and very much on the die cut system I use that creases are noted by red outlines. So I'm going to give it a red stroke for all my creases. I'll be giving my cuts black strokes because the cutting system that I use likes black to mean cut and red to mean crease. And I found that to be fairly common in industry, but if you're out there and your person who does your die cutting says they want gray, give them gray. Don't tell them that Mr. Hewitt said to do it differently. Do what they ask. Talk to your production team and give them what they need. But my production system needs this. Back to our reference picture, we have one, and there's actually, in fact, two rectangles that are basically the same. Here's the second one. So what we can do on the other document is we can go through and recreate this box a second time. Now, I am taking a few liberties with this. Many actual boxes, the panels are not quite identical, and depending on how accurate your measuring is, you can or cannot account for this. Typically speaking, on a thin paperboard box like a cereal box or something you get crackers in, that material requires a little bit to bend around the corners. So you would be actually making one panel about 1/32 of an inch smaller than the other. So if you're measuring this and you're going for complete accuracy, you're going to want to make sure you have rulers that are accurate down to 32 of inches. But for the sake of ease and quicker videos, I'm going to be rounding to the nearest 16th because I'm lazy. So I'm going to copy this over and presume that these are basically the same and symmetrical. The cutback, which is what it's called, would normally remove a 32nd of an inch from one of the panels so that it would make sure the box is completely square when assembled, accounting for the thickness of the paper and the amount of distance it takes to round a corner when you bend the paper. To get this, we need to figure out how far away these two boxes are from each other. So we're going to measure. Go ahead and turn that off for a second. We're going to need to measure this distance right here. There's more than one way to measure this and to choose it, but that's the distance we're going to need to be able to set up the entirety of all these creases. So now that we have measured the gap between the two main panels, which is also the same size as the side panel, we can show you the two methods of making this function. The distance of the side panel, it's the same height as the front and the back of the box, obviously, and the width is 2.25. I'm going to double check my measurement because I'm paranoid that I got it wrong. I don't trust me. Okay, good, 2.25. So there's a couple ways of drawing this. One way is to take the line tool and clicking to make a line segment. Again, you can draw a WYSIWYG if you like, but if you start doing this, you're trying to find a little number in a box and it's hard to get your mouse control fine enough to get what you need. When working with precision measurements, you should be using the more precise methods of drawing in Illustrator, where you click once with any of these tools and it asks you what you want. So I'm going to make this 2.25 inches wide at 0 degrees. So it'll be completely horizontal. Okay. And I can then line this up so it, let me zoom in so you can see that better. So the smart guide says that it's lined, and it is now not going to do what I want, is it? Gee, thanks. Anyways, you could do that, and then you'd also copy one to the bottom with an option drag copy till it meets. The hard part is if you move one side of these, you're stretching the line, and not only does the angle get wrong, but it actually changes the length. So this is one method. It's not necessarily the best method. Another method for generating the same, oh, sorry. To finish this out, you would then copy this box, oh, sorry, guys. I hit my menu and it wouldn't let me continue to drag. Drag this until it snaps here, and this until it snaps there. And it's all perfectly lined up. And that's the main body of the box. Now, another way, if you like other methods, if you think drawing those little lines is too wonky to try and get them in the correct place, another option is to simply copy the box panel and line it up onto itself so you can see they are touching along their edge. And then we're going to use the move function to horizontally move it the same distance as that other line, 2.25 inches, 0 inches vertical. Preview to make sure it's good. Yep, and we're okay. And then simply use the line tool. Instead of having to measure those, we just make connective tissue where we draw a line from point to point on the top and on the bottom. Either one of those methods works fine. There's yet one more stage on this, and I may have to move some things around a bit. Note that there's a bit of a rough start to this as I begin. And you have to refine both the drawing you're working on and the artboard you built in Illustrator as you work. So if I grab all of this and move it left a bit because I need more space, there's one more skinny panel in the box. And to create that last skinny panel, I'm going to copy these two lines. Once I get my mouse to the right spot, there we go, with an option drag until it latches onto the edge of there. Now that is actually all of the creases on this box. The crease layer is completely complete. That's a bad sentence. Completely complete. It's finished. We can lock it and move on. No need to do any more to the crease lines, at least for now, because the outside edge is going to be a cut line. So if I go back and make layer one cut, let's fill in the very first one so I can feel like my box is at least somewhat complete. I'll take the line segment tool, change my stroke color to black because black means cut, and I'm simply going to, I have to unlock my layer. As a side note, be sure to lock the layer you're not using. That way you don't accidentally draw on the wrong layer. So I'm going to go until I see the anchor point. There we are. It says anchor. I'm going to draw this line straight down until it connects to the other anchor. There. I'll probably extend that farther later, by the way. But at least now it's a complete box. Whew, I didn't like those open ends. So now we're back at our reference photo, and we're going to start measuring outer edges and some of the more complicated shapes. We're going to begin by doing the glue flap, which is this flap over here, highlighted for your reference. The problem with this shape is, being trapezoidal, it involves things that are hard to measure, such as angled lines, where the distance might not be intuitive or integer, and also where you have to try and measure an angle. Oh, I see what I did there. My animation failed me. There we go. So what we're trying to deal with is the fact that this line here is an unknown in more than one way. It's not going to be an easy to measure line so much as the other ones are because it's at an angle. And it's also going to require a protractor to try and measure the precise angle. And while if you have a protractor available to you, you're more than welcome to figure out these angles and work on them this way. We're going to use logical setup to be able to have what we need generated for us because there are parts of this that are easier to measure. So we're actually going to be measuring this line, the shorter portion of the middle of it, the actual outside cut line, and we're also going to measure its offset distance to the edge of the crease of the previous section. that represented by this blue line. So we're going to measure that distance and the height of the line. Back on my trace out version, the line we're trying to draw is 11 1/4 inch tall. So we're going to draw that right now. So I'm going to do 11.25. I'm going to make sure that the angle is set to 90, so it's a vertical line, and we're going to say okay. Now to get it where it needs to be, the first thing I'm going to do is line it up onto my screen here. So it is centered on the other line. Believe it or not, it is there. It's just hiding behind. If we move these layers around, you can kind of see it's on top of or underneath the red line, exactly. So now what we're going to do is move it over. So if I use the move function, return or Command Shift M, I will be able to send it on a horizontal distance of how far away it was. It measures out as 3/4 of an inch or 0.75 inches away. Vertical 0 because we want it to move straight across. Now note that the preview is showing it on the wrong side of my line because, like a mathematical graph with XY coordinates, positive numbers move it towards the right. Negative numbers are going to move it towards the left. So the position is going to be negative 0.75. And that should, check the preview again, move it the direction we want. And we say okay. From here, we no longer have to measure because we have established reference points that are solid and placed where we need them. So we'll take the line segment tool and simply draw from anchor to fill in the corners of this tab. Whatever angle and whatever line length those end up being, it looks like it's around a 0.79 inches, is calculated for you. You don't have to do the math. You can set this up in a way where you can logic out the things that are easy to measure and let the computer do the more difficult calculation for you. After all, that's what computers are for. Now we're going to start to work on the locking dust flap on the top of the box. This is where it starts to get complicated, but the same principles we just applied to the glue flap are going to apply here as well. Some of the angles, highlighted here, are not easy to measure. They are complicated and they have slope to them that's a bit hard to measure with basic measuring techniques or tools. So yet again, we're going to find a way to get away without having to do it. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to measure the entire distance from here to here. That'll help us know how much offset cutback there is from those tiny diagonal notches below. So back on our tracing one, we're going to draw a line that's 7 1/4 inch wide, which represents the entire space the top line could take if it didn't have the cutout from it. So it's going to be 7.25, and the angle always loves to be a weird angle. It's going to go back to 0. Thank you very much. And we're going to make that line there. We're going to line this one to the middle of this box here. See how the smart guide shows that it intersects down to the center of the box there. We're then going to move it vertically, and horizontal is going to be set to 0. The vertical distance we need to move this up is 1.5 inches. Now, because the origin point of the graph is set to the top left corner of the page, that moves it down. So it's actually going to be set to negative 1.5 inches. And that'll put it right where we need it. So we say okay. Now, technically speaking, I probably shouldn't make this one black because this is actually going to be a measurement line that I don't keep. Something I should have said early on is we're going to be making a few temporary items that we're going to get rid of. And I'm going to color code those as a color I'm not using. We can use green. Green's a good color. I like it. And we'll delete it when we need to. So there. Green is my color of temporary measurement. That way, if I find any green lines when I'm all done, I can simply go through, find them all, and delete them, rather than have accidental cuts happening where I don't want them. So the green line is going to be where we're attaching to. If we want, we can even lock the line. Oop, wrong button for this one. Command 2 on Illustrator. Apologies, I used the InDesign shortcut and didn't lock it. I made a layer. So it's Command 2 to lock. So from here, we're going to draw our other lines that we know that exist. The short tabs, let's go back to our measuring template. So I have measured and discovered that these lines here, these two, are each 2.5 inches wide. And this middle piece that's cut out of the bottom is 1 3/4 inch. I've also discovered that the distance from here to here is 1 1/8 of an inch. So with those three pieces of information, we can construct most of this set here. Let's go do that now. So from here, we're going to take the line tool. We'll switch back to black because now we know we're making cuts again. And I'm simply going to start by drawing on top of. No, I'm not. I'm going to click and do it proper, right? I'm going to do it proper. I said that was 2.5 inches. Excuse you. 2.5 inches at 0 degrees. Better. And I'll make another one that is 1.75 inches for the shorter inner tab piece. There. So now I'm going to line this up so it intersects to the side. I'm going to copy it over here so it intersects to the side here. I'm going to put this one up in the middle so it lines to the dead center. But I'm actually going to put this down here. So now the bottom piece is aligned to the top crease, and I'm going to move it up to the distance that I measured. You'll notice I'm measuring up from the crease and not down from the higher part of the tab because there are reference points and much easier ways of measuring from that very solid crease line rather than trying to measure the offset from those other lines of diagonal lines connecting. There's no good reference point there. It's much better to find right angles where you can easily measure distances. So the most convenient right angle is measuring from below, and that is 1 1/8 inch higher. So I'm going to move this up 1.125 inches. I changed the angle. Does that also do it? It does. Anyways, so you can also make it the angle 90 instead of -90, and that sends it up to where it wants to be. Okay. Now we have to figure out how to measure this small diagonal in cut. The easiest way to do this is to measure as 90 degrees as possible. We're going to end up measuring basically a straight line across here and a straight line down here and create a small square that we'll be able to use to make our diagonal. Measuring on the box, that comes out to 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch is actually a 45-degree angle. Not too bad. So if we take a rectangle tool and we click once, let's just make sure it's going to be green because that's our measuring color. Click once to make a 0.125 by 0.125 square. It's tiny, but there it is. And we're going to place this right where it needs to be, right sitting on the corner there. Cool. We now have everything we need to finish off this tab. Let's get the line tool out and set it to black and go a little crazy. The first thing we're going to do is draw a line diagonally across, well, that's interesting, across the green box. Then we're going to connect from the top tab down here. Again, these angles would have been extremely difficult to try and measure with a protractor, but by measuring them with the nearest right angles and making sure they connect the way they should, this is actually not that hard. We're also going to connect these anchors here to finish this part of the top. And we could redraw all this over here, but why? Why? When we can simply copy it over. So let's take all this, move it over here. We'll give it an object, transform, reflect, and it should be right in place. But I'm not going to trust it till I verify it. Let's zoom in and double check. I'm going to move it out of place and make sure it connects. I'm getting the connection points. Yep, right where it should be. Great. So now we need to get rid of the measuring pieces. We no longer need the green. Thank you, green. You've done your job. I'm going to unlock all the things on the layer. I'll select one of the green objects and say select, same, stroke color, and delete. What happened to those other ones? Weren't they the same stroke color? Well, that's fun. Select, same. Maybe I used two different greens. I think I used the two different greens without thinking about it. I did. And that's why you use the same color swatch when you're trying to do this. If you start picking random colors, you're not going to get it all the same. So there, that is the beginning of the whole box. The same technique can be applied to finish out the other panels. So now we've created one of these locking tabs completely done on the top. You'll notice though, there is a second one down below. Now, we could go back through and do the same song and dance, but having measured that the sizes are the same, all we really need to do, let's swap back over here and hope the video shows me moving between screens. Watch me find out that none of this was showing later on. Good times. What I should have done and what I will do now is I'm going to select this entire thing here and I'm going to set it to a group. So this is now a group that can be moved as one piece. So we do an option copy drag down below and rotate it or reflect it. Take your pick. It's the same because it's symmetrical until it attaches to the bottom. We now have one extra flap for free. Hooray! And that was just me putting off the inevitable because now it's time to start measuring the hard one. Now it's time to finally bite the bullet, take our medicine, do our chore, face reality, and take care of whatever other euphemisms you prefer. It's time to finally measure the difficult flap, which is this one here. The hard part here is there are a lot of rounded corners involved, so we're going to find ways of measuring out reference points as best we can. So the measurements we can make without too much difficulty are as follows. We can measure the general top side, which actually does, weirdly enough, measure out to be the same width as the previous one. So that'll be the same as this flap here, will be the general across the top flap here. That was 7¼ inches. We will also be measuring the general height of the flap, which measures out to 1½ inches, just like the other flap. We'll also be measuring this shorter cutback where this notch comes to right here. That section measures out as 1⅛ inch. We're also going to measure the point-to-point reference of these divots right here. This line here also comes out as 1⅞ inches. So we're probably going to end up, spoilers, drawing this rectangle for reference. It's quite likely that we're going to use that to build this. We also need to measure these corners, which I can assume, but I will measure to be sure, are probably the same cutback as the other side. The last challenge we're going to face is rounding off the corners, which I'll show you how to use with some clever uses of pen tool instead of the line segment tool. All right, let's carry on and actually do this. So now that we're here, we're going to go back to using our green lines. We'll try to make sure they're all the same green this time. That'll make life easier. And we're going to measure out the pieces we need to make for this. So we're going to start again by drawing the 7¼ inch top line, which we're going to align to the center of this panel right here. And we're going to move that vertically 1½ inches up, which will put us up here. Again, I'll probably lock this just so we don't accidentally move it around. The next thing I'm going to create is that little rectangle I was talking about. So I'm going to take the rectangle tool, still with the green measurement, and we're going to set this up to be 1.875 inches wide by 1.125. Squinting. What is my writing? 1.125 inches high. And that little rectangle, we're going to center up down below here, and that's going to be another measure point that we can go to. Eek. Does not want to line itself up, does it? There it is, finally. Now I know it's centered. I did measure the corners, and those are still the 0.125 inch rectangles. So we're going to make this 0.125 by 0.125, and this will be our corner piece down here. Doop. Should probably keep one of those handy for when we need to work on from here. All right, the next thing is to actually start drawing the actual size pieces on top. Hold up. So the top lines that do exist before the cutouts and the rounded corners are very similar to the previous lines, with the exception of the middle tab being smaller. The two top side lines measured out, and I will draw at, in black because they're cuts, 2½ inches, 2.5. At angle 180, sure, fine. It's the same as 0. And we'll line that up so it we get where we can see what we're doing. There we go. It lines up to the, that's not lined up, is it? Much better. Line up to there, and we'll send its buddy over here to the other side. Then we're going to draw the middle line down below. actually not down below, which is going to be 1.5 inches. And unlike the previous tab, because this locks into place, this one's actually going to be on the top line, just centered between. So you now see we have the structure necessary to finish building this. For this time, I'm going to be using the pen tool instead of the line segment tool to connect these pieces. Let me lock this so it doesn't interfere, and lock this so it doesn't interfere. The pen tool portion is going to be important because we want these lines to join. If you want to be able to round the corner actually has to be one line with a corner, not two lines that meet. You can't round two lines meeting, but you can round a corner when it is a single line with a bend in it. So with a P for pen, we're going to start down here, and we're going to start on this anchor, go to this anchor, and go up to here, and it should join together. That little line with a point in it says that's now one piece. Next, we're going to pick up from here, go down to our reference point here, and back up to here. Then we'll do what the shampoo bottle says and rinse and repeat. Do the same thing again there. Oops. So I need to do one more thing. I forgot because of how I'm doing this. I do actually need to draw both sides of this instead of cheating it out and having the computer do it for me. I'm going to pick this color for my rectangle to make sure it's the same one. It remembers the size I'm making, so we'll do that down here just to make sure my little corner cutout is correct. Let's lock this in place. Take the pen tool, switch back to black, pick up the line here, connect to the corner of this square and down to the corner there. There you go. Got to drop the tool. Okay, so now we need to round some of the corners. Basically, all the top corners are getting rounded. We can't actually do them as a batch. If you take the white arrow or the direct select tool and select an anchor and hold down shift and select another anchor, if we're selecting all the top anchor points. And now you see that little circle. If we click and drag down to about 1/4 inch, we now have, there's 0.25, a rounded radius corner top, creating the top of our box. Looks pretty similar, right? Maybe I over rounded. I think 1/4 inch is about correct for that. And then, just like previous, we're going to unlock everything and we're going to select all of our same stroke color, so all the green drawing boxes, and delete them. And we now have this panel drawn nicely. Now, what I should have done a long time ago, and if anyone's in my class in person, you're probably screaming silently at me, why haven't you saved? I've done a lot of work and a lot of careful measurements, and all it takes is one decent power outage, and this is all gone. Saving your work sounds really basic, but is super vital. If you don't do it, you will regret it. So let's take a moment and save this project. Much better. Now it is serialboxtrace-demo.ai. Now I can rest easy and know that it's not going to get completely ruined because I actually do have a saved copy. As a side note, always make sure you save a copy locally. I know the cloud seems convenient, but it's simply waiting to betray you. Always save a copy where you have access to it in case you need to work on it where there's no internet. Keep a copy on a flash drive, keep a copy on a hard drive. Make sure you have access to your files. So now we're going to measure the last piece of the box, which are these little tiny 4 flaps that are all the same all around the box. So we really only need to make this once, and we will plop it everywhere. So we're going to go ahead and measure these guys out. These are actually some of the easier things to measure. And then the last thing we're going to do at the very end of the project is measure the bottom flap that has no fun details, just rounded corners. So let's switch over and we'll start measuring these guys. The 4 small dust flaps that come in on the short sides of the box, excuse me, are not too hard to do at all. You can draw them strictly with line segments, measure the right distance. So let's grab the line segment tool. It requires no extra setup for these either, since they all come straight up from their creases. There's no cutback, there's no diagonals. Well, there's one diagonal, but it's easy to measure. I'll show you. First thing we're going to do is do the general height of the lines. We're going to make a vertical line at 90 degrees. The height of the line is going to be 1 1/4 inches, 1.25 inches. And that's going to be the left side of this line. So I'll put it in, excuse you. I'll get closer and draw it in so it connects where it needs to connect right here. Oops, it's green. It should not be green, it should be black because this is a final outer cut line. I also want to make sure this goes all the way up until until it intersects where it's supposed to right there. There you go. That meets correctly. Next, we're going to draw the other side going up, which is 0.75 inches. And this line's going to go likewise. Make sure it's all the way up. Nope, it is not. Make sure it connects so it snaps to the point right there. Next, we're going to draw the horizontal line across the top, which is 2 1/16. Now, I should show something else here in case you're curious. While I've memorized what 1/16 is in decimal, if you haven't, you can actually do 1/16, and the computer can calculate that. 0.0625, and just add the 2 in front, and we have what we need. We've tricked the computer into doing our math for us. I did accidentally get the angle wrong, so I'm going to rotate this, holding down Shift so it snaps 90 degrees, and we'll make sure it connects point to point right there. Next, we're going to draw another small vertical line, which I have not measured. Sorry about that. The next vertical line we need is a 0.25 inch line. 0.25 measured to 98 degrees. Okay. Sure, drew it up instead of down. That's fine. We'll drag it down to here. So now for that last little diagonal, all we have to do is connect the existing lines. That didn't quite work. Connect the existing, there you go, point to point lines. Then if we take this whole setup here, we can group this, and we're going to copy it around to the four corners of the box. Copy it over to here, and we'll do an object transform reflect, and it's good. And we'll copy this down. We'll actually take both of these at the same time, copy them down to here. Oops, I missed. Let's try that again. I let go of my left hand too soon. Don't let go of the shift until you have it in place. There we go. And I can either flip them or rotate them until they meet. All four of those flaps are now in place. We only have one flap left to draw to finish the box. This flap is very similar, but slightly smaller than our other flaps. So let's get started. Having measured it out and using the same technique we've already done, this is going to be fairly easy. We're going to click the button to give ourselves a 7.25 inch wide line, set to 0 degrees. It pays to have a clean desk so your mouse doesn't run into your coffee mug, by the way. That didn't quite work. What happened? Oh, it ended up a 0 instead of 7. That's what happened. 7.25, not 0.25. Got distracted by my coffee mug. So I'm going to line this up so it is centered on the red crease. There we go. Intersect to the middle is showing. And we're going to move this vertically down, horizontal 0. Vertical will be a positive number this time. Now this flap is a little bit smaller, so it's only 1.375 inches, 1 3/8. 1.375 down. And then we will still need to do our normal things. Let's grab our green colored rectangles and make our two little corner boxes. There we go. Green stroke. Switch to rectangle tool. Computer remembers I've been making a lot of 1/8 of inch boxes. Let's go ahead and do an 1/8 inch rectangle. Line it up to the outside of the corner. Come on, line up, will you? It doesn't want to line up. It's being annoying. There. So from there, we can, because I'm going to end up rounding these corners, I should do 2 of these. There we are. Cool. Let me grab the 2 green boxes and lock them for the moment so we don't accidentally mess with them. And we're going to use the pen tool because we need to round some of these corners. So P for pen. We're going to zoom in. It's okay if it connects to that one. It's going to go there to there. And then it's going to connect so it glues onto this line here. I'm going to come over here, grab this line, come right up to my measuring corner, and go in and in. Excellent. Now, to finish the entire box, all we need to do is unlock and delete those 2 green boxes. And then we're going to select the 2 corners, this corner, and round those off to 1/4 inch. And there, we have now created an entire cereal box. by avoiding the difficult measurements and finding easy reference points where we can measure at 90-degree angles and get accurate numbers, and then use the computer to calculate and infer the diagonals. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful.